Over a year and a half ago, I planted the seeds for this Leek, Giant Bulgarian Leek, which is my favorite Leek variety, hands down, out of everything I've ever tried. I grew them out for a long time. I selected the best 10 or 12, and I planted those, let them go to seed, and here are the seed heads. These have been drying for quite a while. They dried for a long time on the plant. They dried for a long time in the house. They just take a long time. But they're dry enough now that they'll shatter out of the husks pretty easy. This will be cool. I get to show you some winnowing techniques. That's important. There's all kinds of things that you need to sift and winnow. And if you don't have screens, like you could buy sets of screens for sieving earth and mineral samples and seeds and stuff like that. Most of us don't have those, and honestly, most of us don't need them. If you have good winnowing skills and sifting, basket sifting skills, I would call them, then that can apply to all kinds of stuff, and you don't have to be dependent on having the right screen for the job at any given time. So let's get started on these guys. The first step is just to take these and rub out all the seeds. That starts with getting them, off the heads. We're going to do a lot of that, and I'll see you when we're done. Since I shot that great time lapse that you're about to see, I am running out of light here, so I'm just going to do a lot of this now. There's a group of seeds in a little capsule, and I need to get those completely out of their pods. It's also possible that these are still not completely dry. It seemed like some of them were still a little bit wet. Look at that. This is a bulb, Leek onion, like an onion bulb, that was growing on the seed head. I was saying how long it took these to dry because the genes that make, bulbs like this not dry out easily and stay, plump until they can grow again must be in the seed heads, and there's actually a bulb growing in the seed head. Quite a few onions and garlic and stuff will do that. Some do it regularly, some just do it occasionally. If it needs to dry more, I'll dry it more. It may help too at some point to do something like this and really rub them against a screen or something like this that has a lot of texture. I probably won't use this basket just because I don't want to mess it up. A couple days later, I have seed in various stages of processing. I'm going to do this batch here kind of old school. All I've done to this is rub it for a while, but a lot of the seeds are still in the little, seed pods. Then these guys I process different way, but we'll get to that. Unless the husk is super dry, you can't really get the seeds out of it. So I had this in the sun this morning for about half an hour. And typically it's not a good idea to dry your seeds in the sun because it'll decrease their vitality and their ability to keep for a long time. But a quick blast is not a problem. Just avoid, dry your seeds in an area that's maybe warm, just kind of normal room temperature with good air circulation. Now there definitely were a few seeds left that have some moisture in them, and there probably still are, and that'll have to get dried out after the fact. For now, what I'm going to do is, since I blasted this, I'm just going to do a little bit more rubbing like this. And we can do a lot with this kind of rubbing, but at some point it becomes inefficient because you have all kinds of material in here. I have loose seeds, I have stems, I have seed pods that have been crushed and broken, and all of that stuff interferes with me being able to rub out the seeds from the remaining whole seed pods. But this is doing really well now that it's nice and dry. Now I'm going to show you how to sift and winnow on a basket, and it's not an easy thing to teach, so don't expect to be good at it at first. It's a knack, and it takes time to learn. Again, I'm hitting a point of diminishing returns right now, so I'll start working and stop talking, and we'll just speed this up. Most of the seeds are rubbed out of the pods, but there's quite a few left. When I toss this in the air like that, you'll see a certain amount of the light stuff is just going to float away. So that's one technique we're going to use. Accept now that you're going to lose some seed, because you just are. You're going to lose some seed, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. There should be plenty of seed. Now, an African guy showed me how they do it, and they actually create the wind or the draft by the motion of the basket. You kind of drop it. See? So I'm pushing it down, and it kind of creates a suction that pulls this stuff over the edge. Also be aware that some of what you see escaping as seed, like this right here, there's little black bits in there. Most of those are probably duds, and they're light, so they'll float away. So you just want the heavy seed. The breeze is kind of on and off. Mostly it's going that way towards you. You know, why is this stuff floating away if I sit here and drop it and it's barely moving? Because I'm creating a draft. The other thing is that they're separating themselves by a differential. Right here we have the lightest, shaffiest stuff. This has hardly any seeds in it. There's just a few, and most of those are probably duds. So at this point I can actually scoop that together and just throw it away. Over here we have a concentration of black seed. You know, it's not clean, there's still stuff in it, there's stems. Over here there's a line of pods. So almost all of this is just pods with seed in it, and then most of this is pod with seeds in it, but it has some black seed underneath, a lot of stems. It's separating itself just by that action, like without me even trying. It kind of starts to, like here, let's mix it all up again. I mean, already I've gotten rid of most of the really small stuff. So watch and you'll see that it kind of just separates itself out. So what I'm doing is I'm tossing the seed up slightly, but mostly I'm dropping the basket from under the seed at a certain point, and I'm tipping it slightly to make this little Okay, now almost all the light stuff is gone, and again we have this like separation thing happening. This time it looks like most of the pods over here, most of the seeds over here. Okay, now this is tricky. I've tried to teach this to people and had a kind of a hard time of it actually. This time I'm not really trying. Some of the stuff is going to float away, but I'm not trying to float the stuff away. What I'm trying to do, here let's just mix it all up again. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to separate it into weights. I'm going to toss it in a gentle motion where I just make the stuff hop up and down, but with a very slight circular motion this way. So I'm kind of like making this stuff turn over. Now look what happens when I do that. We have mostly pods here, lots of stems here, pods that haven't managed to make it over the side and roll down here yet. Or these could be light pods with fewer seeds or no seeds or just duds. There's definitely some with seeds. So I'm going to see how far I can take that. Now everything up here is probably a combination of stems, empty pods, and dud seeds. So yes, if I do this, I'm going to waste a few seeds, but almost all of this is chaff. So I don't care. Again, look how much seed I have. This is only maybe half of the seed. Same thing, just get rid of that. Okay, now it's much easier for me to access the unfinished pods. It's also possible that these pods are not quite dry yet and they don't want to shatter. So already most of those remaining pods are shattered, but that's because I made them more accessible and easier to get to without all that other stuff in the way. Now the smaller I get this other shaft, the easier it'll, you know, float away from the rest of the stuff and separate. Set this aside, and I'm going to show you what I did with the other seed. What I did with this one is I took the seed in the same condition, like, you know, partially rubbed, but most of the seeds were still in the pods. I put them in this mesh basket, and originally I just put them in there to just have a texture, like I was using the basket there, to rub the seeds against and break open those pods. But in doing so, a lot of the seeds and a lot of the chaff floated through, so that's what this is. It's actually pre-sifted. So all of this was processed that way, and after doing that, this is the stuff that went through the screen, and this is the stuff that didn't. That allows me to go back to this again and be able to crush that stuff out a little bit more and break up the pods. And then both of these can be sifted, but this is going to sift a lot easier because there's nothing bigger in there than can fit through here. Let's try a different basket. So if I check this basket, and it looks like there's no large holes in this basket whatsoever. Same thing, also has a fine weave. And this one, any 4 of these should be able to be used for this process. It's just going to have to be processing smaller amounts of seed at a time. That's what's nice about this big one here. Again, we're getting a lot of separation here. It's pretty safe to just get rid of all this. The other thing you can do is just, if you don't have a breeze, or if you just want to, you could just blow on it. So if you blow lightly enough, you're going to blow just this light stuff away and kind of off of the edge. Now don't be too alarmed if you see black in there again, because a lot of those are duds. Now again, this is easier to process because there's very few big pieces in here. Here's a couple that just probably fell over the edge of the rim. But since it all had passed through a screen already, this is going to end up a lot cleaner than that other stuff. Now it's just a matter of practice. It's going to be awkward. You'll lose a bunch of seeds over the side at first. You know, I've got some good seeds on the table here. But you can see the quantity of seed I'm going to end up with from these 12 leek seed heads. Typically, if you save seed, you have so much that you're looking for people to give it away to. Of course, I'm going to sell this, but what's it worth of my time to get, you know, 2 or 3 extra packets of seeds for how much time spent? You just got to accept some losses. So I can feel this stuff is a little bit damp, you know. I mean, it's probably just from atmospheric moisture in this batch because I didn't blast this in the sun this morning. It's not behaving as well. Now we have 3 different things. This is the stuff I processed with like the old school method, just rubbing it on the basket, rubbing it in my hands and tossing it. This is the stuff that went through the screen. You can see it's quite a bit cleaner. There's no whole pods in there. There's not very many stems. There's not much fluff. And this one is more like this, where this is the stuff that didn't go through the screen, and so it still has some big stuff left. So I'm just going to mix these 2 together, but I'm going to keep this separate because it needs a little bit less cleaning. Now we're going to see how much of this stuff we can get out before resorting to hand picking. Now, some of these are still green. That's why this one is still closed, this pod here. I'm going to put this in the sun. You can also blow while you toss it. I find it pretty awkward. So I'll usually get some stuff separated out and then just blow it out lightly. Keep in mind also that you want to get rid of the dud seeds. You're probably going to lose a few good seeds getting rid of the dud seeds. So when I do a germ test on these, and, you know, I can put that on the package and say, you know, 96% germination rate or whatever. That's because I'm getting rid of a bunch of those dud seeds. I can still see some bouncing around here. Okay, I have 2 batches of seed left here. I'm not going to mix them because this one just still has a lot less chaff in it. But that's almost clean enough. I think if I just go through this and pick out some stems, I can send the seed out with a little bit of junk in it. So I'll see you when I'm done with hand picking.